going now. And we're live. Hello, Soup Pot. How you doing? I hope you're feeling better, by the way, sir. Thank you very much for your wee email. How's it going? I haven't replied there just yet. As you probably know, I've just been trying to, as much as I've been reading emails, I've been just trying to stay away from the computer a little bit because I'd quite badly hurt my shoulder and neck. But much better. So hi, I hope you're doing well. And I just popped on a little bit early as always, just to check everything's okay. And this is going to be a bit weird for me, Soup Pot, today because I don't sound right, and apparently I'm going to have a bit of a slur well, apparently a couple of weeks, as I've got new teeth. Hey. So I'm getting used to that, but I'm going to be super sibilant tonight. So it's kind of annoying because I'd planned to get a couple of audiobooks recorded, over the Easter holidays. And I was meant to get this done about a month ago. But I'm getting used to it, though I'm a bit concerned about my ability to speak properly. But I'm hoping it will settle in, and after a couple of weeks I'll be talking normally. So apologies if I'm sounding super sibilant. I've been having fun with super sibilant sentences with the words like succubuses and stuff like that, which we've actually got the word succubus in this chapter. So I do apologize to everybody. It comes back your mouth there. I hope so. I've had a wee bit of pain with it. It's really just one tooth, to be honest, at the front here. Your mouth learns. Yeah, I'm quite conscious of language and how I speak and how I use my words and stuff. They're quite important to me, as is my voice. At the minute, I'm feeling like I've got no authority in my voice at all, no power. But that's life, isn't it? Everything's always changing. There you go. I hope you're doing well, Sitpot. I will get a wee email off to you actually at some point. I've got a whole bunch of people actually waiting on emails from me, so I've been kind of reading them but not replying. Pardon me, and it's been the same with the little direct messages and stuff. So as I said, I'm nearly better. There was somebody sent me a wee email about doing what was it called? Was it shoulder angels or something like that? It's kind of an exercise. And I've been doing that. I've actually just been trying to sort of work at my shoulders and stuff, and it's it's helped a good bit actually. So it's been interesting, let's say. That's my favorite word. Soup pot. Interesting is a great word. You can get away with murder with that word, pretty much. But there we go. I'll tell you what, it's hit 9 o'clock. Soup pot. I will say hello to anybody out there in YouTube land. Thank you very much for joining us. This is Doc Sloan's Science Fiction Station. And we're about to start chapter 14 of our book club, which looks at Frank Herbert's Dune Messiah. Compared to last week, chapter 13 was almost like a non-chapter in a sense. That there's virtually very little that we could get out of it, apart from a little bit of a rant about religious government, which is really Frank taking an opportunity, I think, there. The only thing really it does is to give us a little bit of insight into how the conspiracy is going. And at the same time, a little prod to something that's going to happen in this chapter. So basically the previous chapter, as much as I'd scribbled my notes out, basically all I did, I explained the meaning of a couple of words, and really I just felt like I'd read the chapter out. It was a bit naff, but we've got, to be honest with you, in terms of how we dig stuff out, very little to entertain or excite, I think. But this chapter is something else altogether, and it's another very small 8-page chapter. I think the one after this is about 8 pages as well. But goodness, there's so much in this one. A whole lot to get our teeth into, really. And just the difference, and there's just the first 2 pages. I've got free will, destiny, doom, fate. I've got all sorts in this to have a wee look at today and to chat about. And I think it's kind of quite an important chapter in terms of how we look at Paul, but also how we look at Chani. Uh, from my point of view, Super, if you enjoyed it, it's more about for me, because I go into so much detail. Well, I like the detail. I've got all sorts of stuff in this one today. It was just that there was so little, and kind of what even miffed me off a little bit about it was that even there was one word in there, and we got a little bit of a help with it with Chaya, but there was actually a word in it that I couldn't really get a meaning out of, which is rare. But this one, it's as much as it's not a bad little back and forth between Edric and Skytail, and gives us insight into the conspiracy and how that's going, which doesn't seem to be too well. This one, I think, is there's so much in it. It's quite I just find myself wondering a lot about this one. In a very odd way, I've got all sorts of little things to say about this. Enjoyed it. Suitplot. There's Chaya saying shalom all. Shalom Chaya. I hope you're keeping well. Thanks, groovy. Thank you very much for joining us as always. So yeah, if anybody's out there, say hello. It's always good to hear from you. Yeah, I think I started last week's episode with a bit of I've been scammed and ripped off, feeling kind of angry. I'm not going to let that bug me anymore. I'm going to try not to let things like that happen. Or bring them to the show, I suppose. But we had our fun, and there's no harm done. And it's just a little bit of one of those things, I suppose. Well, let's have a wee look, first of all, at our epigraph. From last week, B'nai means son of or children of. Now, what was that? Hang on. Let me have a look. Because there wasn't any too much notes that went into what you told me. I scribbled down, Chaya. Let me see. What was that word? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I mean, as much as I troll through the that's the wrong word. Troll through these chapters. Was it Gangrishi we were looking at? We couldn't get anything, I think. From last week, B'nai means son of or children of. I'm not sure what that one was, but Gangrishi. Was that the word? I've got diatribe and I wonder if I've written that at the back of the chapter here. I'll scribble that down, try and just hear the end here. B'nai means son of or children of. It was talk at the end, and so the original Benny Tilex are. Benny, as in that means gotcha. Thank you very much. We're just wondering about the Benny. Yeah, I tend to go with the Latin one there, but there's a Benny in a number of different languages, isn't there? And Benny, let me get that one. We were talking about why the Talaxa use that term. It means son of or children of. We've got O and Ni in this country. O is son of and Ni is daughter of, isn't it? Thank you very much. That makes that clear. Well, that's scribbled at the back there anyway, so there we go. That's the right place for it. Benny, B'nai. What language is that from? Hebrew Chaya? That B'nai. Benny. There was a guy who used to be in Crossroads. Being silly there. Well, let's have a wee look. Let's see. Chapter 14's epigraph. Nice catch. Let's see. A worm of many teeth. Dear. Canst thou deny what has no cure? The flesh and breath which lure thee to the ground of all beginnings feed on monsters twisting in a door of fire. Thou hast no robe in all thy attire to cover intoxications of divinity or hide the burnings of desire. And this is called Worm Song from the Dune book. Worm of many teeth. I'm relating to that today. I suppose the crux of it within this little epigraph is it the worm with all its power, and even I suppose it's divinity, if you like, in that sense. has no robe in all thy attire to cover the intoxications of divinity or hide the burnings of desire. And I suppose within both of these things, we can consider Paul. I've written something next to this here. Yeah, no, yeah. This is kind of I've got this chapter's got me asking lots of questions, quite frankly, to be honest with you. And we'll see what you guys think when we get there. Let's put that down. Oh, the other thing is, this is my pen, by the way, which all these notebooks have been scribbled with, and I've been using the same type of pen since I was a kid. And unfortunately, this one's cracked. But it's taken 5 notebooks worth of writing, which is sad. It's a thing that happens to these pens. So it's just from my own point of view, this is the thing that gets all these. This little tool that does all this work. And I'm going to have to get a new pen. I'm quite comfortable with that one. I don't like giving up pens. Anyway, let's have a wee look. Just what has no cure here? Life, death, divinity, desire. I've scribbled down a few things, I suppose. Just things to point out, to look for. In this chapter, key words would be vision, concealment, conversion, and I suppose time and honesty. I've made a wee note here, by the way, just before we get going, is also I was having a look at Paul as King Arthur. As in the Arthurian sense, if you like. I was having a little thought about that, just as a. But obviously, there's a fair bit of Oedipus in this one coming here. So let's take a wee look. And again, I'll just say apologies for the way I'm talking today, folks. And I hope I'm understandable okay. I know my accent isn't helpful for some people. But with a bit of a I don't know, a super sibilant slur, I hope it's not too bad and you can understand me. And if I say anything that people don't, if you don't catch something that I said, I'll, just like I would say with my students, just ask me to repeat, because I'm feeling super sibilant and very whistly. So I do apologize. Okay, let's get going. So we have Paul had worked up a sweat on the practice floor using crysknife and short sword against the Gola. He stood now at a window looking down into the temple plaza and tried to imagine the scene with Chani at the clinic. She'd been taken ill at mid-morning, the sixth week of her pregnancy. The medics were the best. They'd call when they had news. Excuse me. Now, I just want to point out that I think we should pay attention to the medics here. And Paul's prescient vision and what we think is going to happen and what actually happens are two different things. So, first of all, then we've got this murky afternoon. Sand clouds darkened the sky over the plaza. Fremen called such weather dirty air. Now, I thought we have a little bit of a double meaning there with the word murky. Murky means something else in the Dune universe. It's the shortened version of Chamarchy. I've just my only note here. Double meaning here is musky and murky are terms in the Imperium for poison in the drink. Chamas is poison in the food. Let me just have a wee quick look at Dune. But how about in the old terminology of the Imperium? We have musky as poison in a drink. See Chamarchy. Goodness. Chamarchy, and it says musky or murky in some dialects, poison administered in a drink. So I think of all the murky afternoon, I think it's a very particular word. And the double meaning there is in relation to a poison. There's Cynthia saying, "Hi Doc, hi all." Hi Cynthia, thanks very much for joining us. We're just apologizing about my sibilant speech today. And hopefully it'll be okay. Now here we go. Would the medics never call? Each second struggled past, reluctant to enter his universe. Now at this point I'd written a little sort of, is this mental theater with Paul? Now, what have I written here next? Oh, I've actually. He's blocking out. Is he blocking out his vision? Sorry, my own wee handwriting had a bit of a turn there. Now I write these wee notes in the book as I go, so I've actually drawn a little arrow down it. We're going to get our answer in a second here. But would the medics never call? No, they won't actually. Each second struggled past, reluctant to enter his universe, waiting, waiting. The Bene Gesserit sent no word from Valak or Wallach, deliberately delaying, of course. So this delay, and here is our answer to this. Well, the answer to my question. We're told that prescient vision had recorded these moments, but he shielded his awareness from the oracle, preferring the role here of time fish, swimming not where he willed, but where the currents carried him. Destiny permitted no struggles now. And there's that word destiny. Take it how you like it. Destiny, doom, fate, you're weird, all of these kind of things. And I've made a wee note that this is very similar. I suppose that we're really heading into the kind of Oedipus territory with Paul, I think, particularly in relation to destiny. I've often commented that in terms of the tragic heroes of ancient Greece, and I should point out that they're all tragic, Oedipus is particularly tragic. And is quite an admirable character, despite all the kind of iconotropy that has come out with from the world of psychoanalysis and psychology, etc. Everything that happens to Oedipus is because it's his destiny, it's his fate. Even the gods can't really intervene, if you see what I mean. Which makes him particularly tragic, I think. I always thought that the Greek gods kind of checking out Oedipus was kind of just watching a car crash and not being able to do anything about it, because he's admired. Pardon me. So, what we're told here is that Paul has recorded these moments, that his prescient vision has recorded these moments. So he's seen these moments in the past as part of a vision. But at this point, he's kind of put blinkers up, if you like. He doesn't want he's shielding his awareness from the oracle, preferring the role of time fish. I quite like that, swimming not where he willed, but where the currents carried him. And it kind of reminds us of how we were talking about Edric, if you like, the guild navigator. I think we terms like newt and fish, this kind of thing, the fishman, this kind of thing. Here we have Paul's a time fish. Excuse me. Now, so from my own point of view, I think Paul has foreknowledge of what's happening here. The questions that he's asking himself might not quite make sense. I don't know if you'll agree with me, but the medics are the best. They'd call when they have news. But I've written next to that little point that they don't. So that should make us start asking questions about Paul's prescient vision, I think. And we'll get to it, I suppose. Now, the Gola, we're told, could be heard racking weapons, examining the equipment. Paul sighed, put a hand to his own belt and deactivated his shield. The tingling passage of its field ran down against his skin. He'd face events when Chani came, Paul told himself. Time enough then to accept the fact that what he'd concealed from her had prolonged her life. And I'll just read forward a little bit here. Paul's thoughts here are, was it evil? He wondered, to prefer Chani to an heir. But by what right did he make her choice for her? And then what comes next is, well, foolish thoughts. Who could hesitate given the alternatives? Slave pits, torture, agonizing sorrow, and worse. Right. There's quite a bit to say there, I think, isn't there? And first of all, he has knowledge of what's happening to his partner, the woman who's going to bear his children. He conceals that from her. So it's a lie of omission at best. And the excuse is the same excuse, in my opinion, that the Atreides often provide. It's the lesser of many evils, if you like. Goodness, and I've written here next to this, for those of us who have read the book before, based on the ending of this book, we should ask, is this true? I suppose. Let me see. Yeah, plenty to say about this. First of all, Paul's thoughts here, I suppose, mirror my own. Was it evil? Well, I suppose to prefer Chani to an heir. And I think the question is that that's the choice. I think the thing is that that's the choice he doesn't make. He makes the preference of an heir to Chani. I'm not too sure. But why did he make her choice for her? Well, the same right that he has, that he mentions elsewhere in Dune, because he's Paul Atreides. I think. So I've got that he choose, and if this is the choices that he has, there is prefer. What he gets out of this is he chooses Leto II, is the way I look at it. And there's also an option, I suppose, that you can prefer not to choose. But I was asking myself, was this a good choice? The foolish thoughts, is it evil to prefer Chani to an heir? That doesn't quite match up, does it? By what right did he make her choice for? That's a foolish thought. And I went, no, it's not. He has no right to make this choice for her. It's as simple as that. But the excuse coming is, who could hesitate given the alternatives? And the alternatives are slave pits, torture, agonizing sorrow, and worse. Now, slave pits and torture, agonizing sorrow, I would probably take that one. But the question, I suppose, comes down to is, should he have told her? And we have to have a look at question the agency of Paul. I suppose the way I've written it here is the agency of Paul versus Chani's agency, if you like, women's agency. And for a good look into that topic, check out Cara Kennedy's book on the subject. But the question is, should he have told her? And I suppose it's coming down to, is there any free will here? And I've also sort of asked a question, is it really, are there no good options here? That if Chani's going to be dead in X amount of time, couldn't you just go off and have a bit of fun or do something? There must be some sort of possibility, you know? Let me catch up with your comments a wee second, folks. Cynthia's saying the language of disease and illness started in the last chapter. Mental epidemic, yes. Contagion, plagues, infection. Paul with no antidote. Here there is no cure for the intoxications of divinity. Yes, and nothing can hide the burnings of desire. Very good. And no cure for Chani. And Leto lived and Chani did not. Yeah, so the preference, and I've written here that preference isn't his choice. This is what he'd prefer, but is that what his choice is? And clearly he's seeing some alternative futures, we have to assume, or that he's already seen all of this, but based on something that's going to happen here, something that doesn't happen in this chapter, and of course ultimately what happens at the end of the book, we actually have to seriously question Paul's prescience, because he does not see things. Things happen that he does not know about. I don't know what you guys think. I think it's a pretty shitty thing of him to do to Chani, to be honest with you. Especially when her life is going to be severely limited. Even with the birth being accelerated, with the birth she'd have a maximum of 9 months to live, I suppose, but it's probably a lot less than that. And he keeps this from her. And was it evil? It's a good question. Are these foolish thoughts? By what right did he make her choice for her? Foolish thoughts to him, but not to us, I think. They're definitely, we should definitely consider them. I think it's a pretty shitty thing to do, to be honest with you. But that's just me, you know. Yeah, he doesn't want to face the choice he made. That could be why he doesn't want to see anything about the birth or the baby. He's flirting with denial. That's what Paul says. Paul's bad to the bone. um, hmm, that's a good question, isn't it? We talk about the mistakes of someone like Paul being amplified, about the people around him amplifying these mistakes, etc. But I think here's a good example of him making such a mistake in his own personal relationships. Um, it's a tricky one, but I don't come out of this chapter liking him very much. Um, but here we go. I suppose mulling that over. And by the way, the slave pits, torture, agonizing sorrow. I'd take that. It'd be a bit sad, really sad. You know, agonizing sorrow. I've dealt with that. It's not nowhere near like torture or being a slave, I'd imagine. Hmm. But here we go. He heard the door open, Chani's footsteps. Entered Chani. And Paul turned. I missed that wee bit out. I'll just scribble that down. That's why I'm being a bit confused. And that's going to be, I suppose, Paul turning here is going to be interesting when we have a wee look at it. I like this line. This is good. Murder sat on Chani's face. It says it all, really, doesn't it? The wide Fremen belt which gathered the waist of her golden robe, the water rings worn as a necklace, one hand at her hip, never far from the knife, the trenchant stare which was her first inspection of any room, everything about her stood now only as a background for violence. That's a cracking little paragraph that Frank's written there. At the beginning with murder sat on Chani's face and ends with this as a background for violence. I think it's really well put together, and she pops in. We kind of get the usual Fremen description of her attire, etc., but it's framed with a bit of murder, death, kill. I think, quite rightly so. And he opened his arms as she came to him and gathered her close. Oh, Now, Chani says, someone, she rasped, speaking against his breast, has been feeding me a contraceptive for a long time. Before I began the new diet, there'll be problems with this birth because of it. Of course, someone is Irulan, isn't it? I suppose at this point, as almost everything Paul says, we'll get to it, but I think it's theatre. I think he's now playing a role. He says, but there are remedies. He asked, dangerous remedies. I know the source of that poison. I'll have her blood. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I've written next that, not her water. Paul says, my Sahaya, he whispered, holding her close to calm a sudden trembling. You'll bear the air we want. Isn't that enough? And I've written a wee question here, and we'll get this one answered, I suppose, as we go further. I've written, is this the royal we? Is it what they both want? When he says that we've got this pronoun we here, you'll bear the air we want. It's going to kill her. I don't think this is maybe how she imagined it, but I was asking, is it? And is it for her? Is it this what she wants as well? We will get an answer to that. I think. Chani says this. Sorry, my life burns faster, she said, pressing against him. The birth now controls my life. The medics told me it goes at a terrible pace. I must eat and eat and take more spice as well. Eat it, drink it. Oh, I'll kill her for this. And a bit more of, yeah, the Fremen Chani wanting a bit of blood for this. Quite rightly so, I suppose, if we consider what's been done here. Chani is like a DOA, isn't it? She's a dead person walking. Paul kissed her cheek. No, my Sahaya, you'll kill no one. Irulan prolonged your life. Irulan prolonged your life, beloved. For you, the time is the time of death. Sorry, I read that as him saying that. That was his thoughts. So no, these are his words. No, my Sahaya, you'll kill no one. But Paul's thoughts here are Irulan prolonged your life, beloved. For you, the time of birth is the time of death. So we have basically a prescription for Chani's doom, her fate, her destiny, her weird, whatever you want to call it. But whenever the birth comes, that's her life up. And we're told that Paul, he felt hidden grief drain his marrow, then empty his life into a black flask. And I've just written next to that, you like this one, Soup Pot? I've just written interesting metaphor. Oh dear. There's Joseph Smith saying, howdy Joseph, how you doing? Thanks very much for joining us. And Soup Pot saying, Paul always takes the path of least resistance, and a howdy back. Yeah, it's, if you think about it in some ways, what ultimately we'll call the golden path, it is, isn't it? It's kind of taking a particular path, isn't it? The safe way through to deal with a problem at the end of time. I've often thought the logic of it, whenever we get there, it doesn't really make sense at all. But D. Viller says he didn't know about Leto. Yes, there's little things. Well, I'm not so sure. Leto the first, you talking about D, the baby Leto. I think there's a strong suggestion. I think we covered it maybe in that chapter that he did know. Have a wee look. I think, because I often compare that to the sacrifice of Alice. If you see what I mean, he's waiting for it to happen. And based on these things, I think maybe he's baby Leto the second. Yeah, well, again, baby Leto the second. What we're saying here at the end of this book is that he's expecting a male child. He's not expecting two, and that's that's where the future is different. If you see what I mean, it's a tricky one, this chapter, I suppose, and that I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is what makes this sort of thing is what makes Paul Atreides and Leto II extremely tricky characters to kind of deal with on a moral level, if you like, on an ethical front. And it's also, I suppose we'll see. I mean, he's being pretty nice to Chani here, but and he's certainly sad about it. I like that it drained his marrow, literally out from his bones into a black flask. And again, I think it's an interesting metaphor, just with water metaphors and stuff like that. Yeah, it's it's an interesting thing. He's getting I think we'll get there, but I think he only sees one of them. He doesn't expect twins, and that's whenever we get to his vision. So his vision is not correct at the end of the book, and it's not correct here, and that makes us ask all of these questions about what he's doing. It makes me ask them anyway. So Chani pushed away from him, and she's not liking. She cannot be forgiven. Paul said, "Who said anything about forgiving? Then why shouldn't I kill her?" And Chani's question, now this is an interesting bit. We're told it was such a flat Fremen question that Paul felt himself almost overcome by a hysterical desire to laugh. He covered it, or he hid it, by saying it wouldn't help. And Chani asks, "You've seen that?" And Paul, we're told, felt his belly tighten with vision memory. What I've seen, he muttered. And we'll get to this next little bit in a second. Now, just first of all, the idea, and I must look this up actually. Hang on a wee second, folks, because I'm not 100% sure, but I wanted to check this. I've got sort of a few different things here, but particularly hysterical and his belly tightening. I just wanted to see if let me see, where are we? If the term pregnant is used with in relation to time with Paul, because I was kind of getting that kind of vibe from this. Let me see, where would I have a copy of Dune Messiah ebooks? There it is. Right, let's have a wee quick look. Bear with me a wee second, folks. Oh, I hate this new look. I can't find a damn thing with this new look. I don't know. No. What have we got there? Nothing out such. With rare light in this darkness, you cannot fix your gaze upon it. Senses cannot record it. No words describe the abyss remains. It is pregnant with all the things yet to be. It's just something from Alia there. It's not quite what I was thinking of. But just this idea, the word hysterical being used here with Paul is an interesting one. And how he's behaving here, compared to how Chani's behaving. Hysterical is an interesting word. Is from the Greek word hystera, which means womb. Hysterikos would be of the womb. And it's one of these kind of words that has a kind of an association with a bit of quack medicine, etc. The term's first coined by Hippocrates of Kos in the 5th century. Hysterical generally means to turn around in the womb, if you see what I mean, and is a label that was applied to women's problems, if you see. There's all sorts of interesting stuff if you want to look into how nutty it was and things like this. And we've got some stuff to do with Sigmund Freud coming up, but hysterical on its own, perhaps not so much. But with the word conversion, we'll have a wee look at that in a bit. But it was just in terms of hysterical, the belly tightening, these kind of things. And to be honest with you, not to take this the wrong way, but you would almost imagine Chani should be hysterical here. I've been poisoned. I'm going to die. I'm going to have this extreme pregnancy. I'm going to have to take all these drugs to deal with the acceleration, and then I'm going to. That you think would, in terms of making you a bit angry, etc. But her questions are kind of flat, aren't they? She wants to kill her, but she's pretty much under control here. She's very cool, isn't she? And I just thought the terms here. So we'll get to it. I've scribbled it down somewhere, but Freud has a kind of an idea about hysteria in men, if you see what I mean. Birth terms really was kind of where I was coming at that. I don't know if you'd agree with me. Why shouldn't I kill her? She said it was such a flat framing question that Paul felt himself almost overcome by a hysterical desire to laugh. He covered it by saying it wouldn't help. And again, this is concealment from Paul. You've seen that? Asks Chani. He felt his belly tighten with vision memory. It's almost as if he's pregnant, if you see what I mean, with all of these visions that he's seen within. And again, future memory, if you like. What I've seen, he muttered. Every aspect of surrounding events fitted the present, which paralyzed him. He felt chained to a future which, exposed too often, had locked onto him like a greedy succubus. Apologies, that was one of the words I was dreading saying tonight. Succubus, there we go. Wasn't too bad. Tight dryness clogged his throat. Had he followed the witch call of his own oracle, he wandered until it spelled him into a merciless present. Succubus, for those who don't know, is kind of a sex demon, a female sex demon. The male one would be an incubus. Succubus is a funny one, isn't it? It should almost be subcubus, but it's succubus. Sub from under. Cubare is the Latin word to lie. And a succubus in medieval Latin would have been a term for a prostitute. But if you go forward a bit, you'll find out that a succubus is a demon that creates semen. From the Latin, what I've got here, succubus, succubare, which is a paramour, to lie beneath or under, and then is in English from the 14th century onwards, and you'll find it in the Malleus Maleficarum by good old Heinrich Kramer. That's the book that's the Hammer of the Witches. If any of you studied Macbeth, that kind of thing, looking at James I, James VI, and his wife, etc., all of the kind of stuff's from around them. Yeah, it's quite interesting actually. Malleus Maleficarum is the Hammer of the Witches, if you like. It's one of those words with a hammer. It's a book, by the way. It's a bit like we've got funny books like The Shepherd of Hermas and stuff like that. Hermas is the person, the shepherd is the book. If you see what I mean, quite funny. But yeah, he chained to a future exposed too often, had locked onto him like a greedy succubus. Tight dryness clogged his throat. Pardon me. Had he followed the witch call of his own oracle, he wandered until it spelled him into a merciless present. Is he creating the future that by following a particular path? I think is what he's wondering. Let me just catch up with your comments, folks. Excuse me. Baby sees Ghana. Oh yeah, just one baby. Can't see baby Lito 2 because he's a Kwisatz Haderach. Sorry if D. Miller says, sorry I've covered Chani's death caused by the contraceptive, which Paul didn't stop to prolong her life, but with if she would have been fine. And so Paul's vision of her death was self-fulfilling. So this is what we're getting at really here. Is what Paul sees what happens, and he acts on these visions. And I think there's just a couple. We need to nitpick a little bit, but I think there's a couple of clues here. But the fact, just to point out earlier, the medics would call when they had news. That's not what happens. Chani walks in with the news from the medics, and so that's the thing that really. And why mention these medics? Why keep bringing them up? If we're not ever going to see them. And the fact that it's not considered really here. But Chani, again, is prepared to do things for Paul based on the idea that he has seen them in his vision. And what she presses him on here, you've seen that? Tell me what you've seen. And Paul says, I can't. Why mustn't I kill her? Because I ask it. Oh, thank you. Excuse me a wee second, folks. What's up, you big love? You okay? You want to come in? Yeah, your bunk bed's over there. Oh, sorry, got a doggy here at the door. There she is. Are you coming in? Hello. Apologies for that. What are you after? You want over to your bed? Go on. Come on, over you go. I'm busy. Come on. Hop on. Excuse me a wee second, folks. Do you want up here? Yeah, go on. Sit there. That's it. Relax. Take it easy with Cadbury's caramel. That's you. There we go. No? Oh, no, you going out? Sorry, folks. Give us a wee second. Come on, big son. Let's go. Where's Wendy? Huh? Hello? Could you help? Come on, there you go. Sorry about that, folks. Pardon me. Oh, we're back to the doghouse here. I've got probably can't see it, but the dogs have got a bunk bed over here. But it's that kind of time of night when they're a wee bit restless. Let me just catch up. Where are we? Which Paul didn't stop, but without it, she would have been fine. So Paul's vision of her death was self-fulfilling. Yeah, he has to have known. He's known all of this, and we'll get an admission on it, I suppose. Cynthia's saying Herbert didn't unpack this, but I wonder if the Fremen culture had a taboo against or imposed a lethal punishment for one wife interfering with the childbirth of another wife shared by the man. The evil are saying Leto II. And Doggo 50. Yeah. Let me see. I think there is something about within. I think we get a bit of a chat about Fremen women and their men, don't we? I think what Paul's done here would be certainly cause, I think, for Chani to leave him, if you see what I mean. But yeah, wife interfering with the childbirth of another wife shared by the man. I'd imagine it'd be trial by combat or something like that. But we seem to get I think we do get a discussion of how the different Fremen women and men work. Actually, is it to do with going back a bit, I suppose, but it's to do with just how the families work through. I think we learn a bit through the children of Jeff and Jamis, if you like, and a little bit through Hera as well. Doesn't she end up being Stilgar's wife? Yeah, but I don't think he does. Yeah, I see what you mean. A taboo against, attacking children or interfering with childbirth, that kind of thing. It's interesting, actually. I forgot to mention something very at the beginning. It was just that in terms of, I suppose, a Fremen taboo, I would imagine it'd be quite taboo within the Imperium as well. But it was just one other wee thing that I noticed at the start was when he was practicing, he was using the crysknife and the short sword. And I considered one a Fremen weapon and one a weapon of the Imperium, if you like. It was just a little point I wanted to make. But paralyzed, not action, inaction. What does he see? What's he hiding behind it? He's got blinkers on. Tell me what you've seen. I can't. Why mustn't I kill her? Because I ask it. He watched her, and I like this bit. He watched her accept this. She did it in the way sand accepted water, absorbing and concealing. So he's had something from her, and what's really going on here within Chani's head is also being concealed from him. But again, it's tell me what you've seen. I can't. Why not? Is the question. And if he did tell her that he's known about, I don't know. He does in a way, doesn't he? In fact, he's not Fremen. It's a repeated point. Yes. The other thing I was going to say before we push on was just how subtly I think that the changes to Arrakis are being thrown in on us. Generally with architecture, this kind of thing. But that there's the changes, the subtle changes are underway. And he watched her accept this. She did it in the way sand accepted water, absorbing and concealing. There's a nice little bit of payoff for this bit of writing in a bit. And his question here was there obedience beneath that hot, angry surface? He wondered. And he realized then that life in the royal keep had left Chani unchanged. She'd merely stopped here for a time, inhabited a way station on the journey with her man. Nothing of the desert had been taken from her. Obedience. Was there obedience underneath that? Would he obey? Would she obey? I suppose. The other little thing there, life in the royal keep had left Chani unchanged. She'd merely stopped here for a time, inhabited a way station on a journey with her man. Nothing of the desert had been taken from her. That reminded me so much of the King of Elfland's daughter. Yeah, which after I'd read that book, I kind of saw a fair bit of that character in Chani. Hmm. Especially the way she's described. Up until this point, she was always elfin, wasn't she? It was her main characteristic. Hmm. But she hasn't been changed by the royal keep. She's still Chani. She's still the Eight Kind's daughter. She's still a Fremen. And I think we certainly got that sense of her of that whenever she arrived. Hmm. Nothing of the desert had been taken from her. Chani stepped away from him then and glanced at the Gola, who stood waiting near the diamond circle of the practice floor. Uh, that kind of reminded me, I've just quickly scribbled it, but the diamond circle of the practice floor reminded me on the Sook symbol. I'm kind of wondering with the medics here, Sook doctors, that we talked about that we don't meet. Chani says, "You've been kids with him." And Paul says, "And I'm metallic. I don't like it," she said. "He's not intended to do me violence." "You've seen that?" "I've not seen it." "Then how do you know?" And Paul says, "Because he's more than a Gola. He's Duncan, Idaho." Chani's response here is the Benny Twi'leks made him. And Paul says that they made him more than they intended. Now, Russ's questions here, I've got a few here, I suppose, and I kind of know the answers to these, but it was more on a more extended level. I was kind of asking, what is a Gola, really? And what is more than a Gola? And then I was asking myself, I asked a few questions here. What's a Kwisatz Haderach and what's more than a Kwisatz Haderach? And then I was asking, has there been a female Gola? And then I asked the question, was the Bene Twi'leks Kwisatz Haderach a female? And at a certain point within this, we'll probably realize that they must have a female Gola possibly lined up. The other thing that got me thinking was, can there be a Gola of a person? Well, no, there couldn't be, could there? We're assuming that a Gola is taken from the cells of a dead person. But I was actually thinking, would there be, I think we're going into cloning there, aren't we? I was just having a wee wonder about that. And then it actually made me wonder, was the Bene Twi'leks Kwisatz Haderach a Gola? And just got me asking questions. Yeah, it's interesting. But I was thinking about female Golas as well, especially where this is going to go. So they made him more than they intended. And Chani, we're told, she shook her head. A corner of her Nizoni scarf rubbed the collar of her robe. How can you change the fact that he is a Gola? That he is Gola? So Paul asks Hayt here, Hayt, are you the tool of my undoing? And Hayt says, if the substance of here and now is changed, the future is changed. And I think that's quite an important, especially in line of what we've just been talking about. Is Paul acting out every word, every gesture, all of it? Is all of this him falling into a sort of series of placeholders, if you like, because he's seen them? Is he behaving a certain way? Is he acting a certain way? And if that's the case, what is said and done here will change the future. Is what the goal is saying. It's a tricky one to get our heads around, isn't it? As much as it's a kind of vague statement, it's not really. It's actually quite kind of to the point. If the substance of the here and now, if the substance of the present changes, the future has changed. But everything changes all the time. Everything. And sometimes I kind of wonder with the kind of nature of the mathematical nature of the mentats and prescience and so on and so forth. I don't think we get any kind of consideration of things like butterfly effects, this kind of thing. But what Hayt says to Chani, I quite like her. That's no answer. That's her response. That is no answer. Chani objected. Well, because the answer was, "Are you going to be the?" It was in response to the question, "Are you the tool of my undoing?" So it wasn't an answer in that sense. Paul raised his voice. "How will I die, Hayt?" And we're told light glinted from the artificial eyes, and Hayt says, "It is said, my lord, that you will die of money and power." And Chani, we're told, stiffened here. "How dare he speak thus to you?" Paul says the mentat is truthful. Now, is he? And I think we know that Paul has a bit of truth sense, don't we? Money and power, possibly, but I don't think that's how Paul dies. Maybe as due to the machinations of power, perhaps. But the mentat is truthful, Paul said. And again, honestly, sorry, my pen not doing good. I'm going to ask a question. Is he? at least we're told that the way truth sense works is it's not that it detects the truth, but it detects if someone believes they're telling the truth. I think, isn't that right? Supposing the fact he's not friends, repeated point over and over. Yeah, Cynthia at the end of the book. Cynthia says at the end of the book, the Kylax will offer Paul a gola of Chani with her memories, so at least they want Paul to think it's possible. So what is there +1? Yes, it's funny, I suppose. If we do know the book, we've got a bit of prescience. We know where this is going. I got 1, 2, 3 different things here that aren't going to be correct in a sense, if you like. Which really just begs what about the nature of his prescient vision. The mentat is truthful, Paul said. Chani asks, was Duncan Idaho a real friend? Paul says he gave his life for me. Chani whispered, it is said that a gola cannot be restored to his original being. And this is the bit where we were talking about. Hayt says, would you convert me? The gola asked, directing his gaze to Chani. Now, Chani asks a question. What does he mean? And Paul says, to be converted is to be turned around, but there's no going back. Now, for who, I suppose, questions. We were talking about the word hysterical earlier, and now we've got the word conversion. I think I might find this later on, actually. I might have stuck it at the back of the book. Let me see. Hysteria, I just wrote at the back of the book, I've written see Wikipedia for Freud theory of hysterical conversion. Let's bring it up. Let's see. There's an article on hysteria and female hysteria. It's well worth checking out. Many influences from Freud and Jean dedicate research to hysteria patients. Let me see, Freud. So just to read this little bit, in 1896, Sigmund Freud, an Austrian neurologist, published The Etiology of Hysteria. The paper explains how Freud believes his female patients' neuroses, which he labels hysteria, resulted from sexual abuse as children. Freud named the concept of physical symptoms resulting from childhood trauma hysterical conversion. Freud hypothesized that in order to cure hysteria, the patient must relive the experiences through imagination in the most vivid form while under light hypnosis. However, Freud later changed his theory, and his new theory claimed that his patients imagined the instances of sexual abuse, which were instead repressed childhood fantasies. By 1905, Freud retracted the theory of hysteria resulting from repressed childhood fantasies. Freud was also one of the first noted psychiatrists to attribute hysteria to men. He diagnosed himself with hysteria, writing that he feared his work had exacerbated his condition. There we go. So it was simply, I just wanted to point these out, and as we this little thing. I've scribbled that down at the back of the book here. But Hayt says, would you convert me? Chani asks, what do you mean? What does he mean? Paul says, to be converted is to be turned around. Paul said, but there's no going back. And I've written next to that, for who. Now, what Frank's doing here is giving you a wee bit of dictionary work, if you like. I'll do the same. So convert, in that sense, is from the Latin convertere, which means to turn about. We get it from the Old French. Let's see, I've written this down. Convertir, and then to convert in Middle English, which means to turn around in a different direction. Modern meaning is to change one's religious belief. But I've also got that in logic. Convert means to transpose the subject and predicate of a proposition according to certain rules to form a new proposition by inference. I didn't think if that was particularly relevant or not, but I thought it was kind of interesting, and I thought I'd share, because I do like plying through dictionaries and etymological searches and stuff. Worst cases, let's see. Carlos Crisales. Hi, Carlos, saying, I wonder why clones weren't as popular as Golas in the Imperium. Worst case is that the Bene Tleilax have serial immortality. That's their fallback. Laughing out loud. Wow. Yeah. You would assume that clones are probably about, actually, to be honest, that cloning from something alive I would imagine would be easier than cloning something dead. No, maybe not, to be honest. But yeah, there's lots of little questions here, isn't there, about that? And yeah, as I said, I was wondering what is a Bene Tleilax? Kwisatz Haderach. Lots of little curiosities to wonder about. Let's see. So, to be converted is to be turned around, but there's no going back. And I went, for who? Does that, I think that means he's committed to a path here. It says, every man carries his own past with him. And Paul asks, at every Gola? It says, in a way, my lord. Then what of this past in your secret flesh? Paul asked. Now, I've just asked a wee question. Does Hayt wish to be converted here? Because he's asked the question. Do you wish to turn me around, is what he's asking of Chani. In the nature of that question is, do you want me to be restored to who I was, to be Duncan Idaho, I think. Now, we get this little bit here. Then what of this past in your secret flesh? Paul asked. And Chani, we're told, saw how the question disturbed the Gola. His movements quickened, hands clenched into fists. She glanced at Paul, wondering why he probed this. And I've written next to this, see last chapter, because this is kind of, and I suppose it comes to what was the last chapter about, but this is what Skytail wants. We need to poke. We need to poke the Gola into quicker action. How do we do that? And it's basically to get him to ask questions about his past. It's as simple as that. And what we've got, I suppose, with all of that, the two of them being quite sort of at each other in the previous chapter, it's kind of what you know and what you don't know. Does that make sense? What does the conspiracy know what's going on? What does Paul know? What does everyone else know? What are we clued in on because of the prescience that the book gives us? This kind of thing. Oh, and it's so the funny thing about it is that Paul himself is doing what Skytail wants, if that makes sense. And again, we have to wonder, has Paul seen that conversation? Yeah. Chani's thoughts here. Was there a way to restore this creature to the man he'd been? And Chani asks, has a Gola ever remembered his real past? And Hayt says this. Many attempts have been made, Hayt said, his gaze fixed on the floor near his feet. No Gola has ever been restored to his former being. And And just before we go on, many attempts have been made. It reminded me of many men have tried. Many men they've tried. They tried and died. I've made a wee note. I just thought this was a bit like the man taking the water of life. This little passage here, it reminded me of it. And we're supposed to see this kind of repetition of motifs, etc., within Dune Messiah that we see in Dune. Carlos Crusade says, "How far does Edric's protection go?" Based on this, nowhere. As far as I think it doesn't offer. I think Paul's allowing everything to happen. Or maybe I suppose we're told that it's more about what you can't see than what you can, if you know what I mean. That your things are noticeable by their absence. And if you're a prescient person, if you're scanning, I can see what somebody's in that room is up to there. They're doing it. Oh, here's a room, and I know who's in it, but I can't see a thing inside it. It's that kind of thing, I think. But the suggestion would be that they're not hidden from at least Paul, I think, and possibly. Many attempts have been made, Hayt said, his gaze fixed on the floor near his feet. No Gola has ever been restored to his former being. And I've again asked the question, what about the Bene Tleilax, Kwisatz Haderach? Was that a Gola? And whenever that Kwisatz Haderach committed suicide, was that why? It's interesting. Paul says, but you long for this to happen. That's a statement, not a question. On the blank surfaces of the Gola's eyes came up to center on Paul with pressing intensity. Yes, Hayt says. And voice soft, Paul said, if there's a way. And I've written next that he knows there is. He must. Hayt says this flesh, Hayt said, touching his left hand to forehead in a curious saluting movement, is not the flesh of my original birth. It is reborn. Only the shape is familiar. A face dancer might do as well. And Paul says, not as well. And you're not a face dancer. That's true, my lord. Whence comes your shape? I wrote next, that's a good question. And here it says, the genetic imprint of the original cells. Now, somewhere there's a plastic something which remembers the shape of Duncan, Idaho. It's said the ancients probed this region before the Butlerian Jihad. What's the extent of this memory here? Oh, excuse me. What did it learn from the original? Is the response from the Gola. Somewhere there's a plastic something which remembers the shape of Duncan, Idaho. A plastic something. I took that as plastic. Where are we? Plasine is to mold, isn't it? Plasticos is Greek. Latin plasticus, and takes us to the Italian plastica, which is the modern word plastic, which is the art of modeling. But in this case, somewhere there's a plastic something. I think the best term to use would be like a mold, if you like. Somewhere there's like a mold that remembers the shape of Duncan, Idaho, within his cells. It said, and this is just a little interesting aside, I suppose. It said the ancients probed this region before the Butlerian Jihad. What's the extent of this memory, Hayt? And what did it learn from the original? It's an interesting question. And I suppose it hankers to how far back, do things like genetic memory, other memory go? Yeah, it's an interesting little bit that. I'm not quite too sure what to think about it. What did it learn from what's the extent of this memory? What did it learn from the original? What's the extent of this memory, this plastic something, this mold? And what does it get from the original Duncan, Idaho? I think. I don't know, I suppose he just shrugs, doesn't he? Which seems to be a bit of a motif of Hayt. Who knows? Chani asks, what if he wasn't Idaho? Paul said he was. Can you be certain? And Paul's response here is, he is Duncan in every aspect. I cannot imagine a force strong enough to hold that shape, thus, without any relaxation or deviation. And I think that's the qualities of a face dancer, if you like. That sooner or later they would have to relax or have some sort of deviation from the original. Where Duncan does not, Hayt does not have this from Duncan. But this causes an odd response from Hayt. just to repeat this, he is Duncan in every aspect. The key words here are, I cannot imagine those. I cannot imagine a force strong enough to hold that shape, thus without any relaxation or deviation. Sorry. And Hayt says, my lord, Hayt objected, because we cannot imagine a thing, that doesn't exclude it from reality. There are things I must do as a Gola that I would not do as a man. And I've kind of wondered, such as, wonder what those are. Keeping his attention on Chani, Paul said, you see. And she nodded. And I think this bit's interesting now. Paul turned away, fighting deep sadness. Converted. We had it a moment ago. To be converted is to be turned around. Paul's just turned around in a sense. And that's kind of where I was linking these kind of terms up with Paul. Fighting deep sadness. And again, what are the things that he sees possible for Chani's future? Slave pits, torture, agonizing sorrow. Well, here's deep sadness. That's not too bad, is it? He crossed to the balcony windows and drew the draperies. Lights came on in the sudden gloom, and he pulled the sash of his robe tight, listened for sound behind him. Nothing. Almost as if he's expecting a sound behind him, I thought. And we get this light to dark to light kind of thing with the drapes here, bringing a bit of gloom into the room, bit of atmosphere. But he pulled the sash of his robe tight, listened for sound behind him. Nothing. He turned, and Chani stood as though entranced, her gaze centered on the Gola, not on him. Hayt, Paul saw, had retreated to some inner chamber of his being, had gone back to the Gola place. That's an interesting way of putting it, isn't it? Chani turned at the sound of Paul's return. She still felt the thraldom of the instant Paul had precipitated, the slavery of it. For a brief moment, the Gola had been an intense, vital human being. For that moment, he had been someone she did not fear. Indeed, someone she liked and admired. Now she understood Paul's purpose in this probing. He had wanted to see the man in the Gola flesh. And she stared at Paul. She says, that man, was that Duncan, Idaho? That was Duncan, Idaho. He is still there. And I love this. This is a fantastic. But what essentially has happened, I suppose, is as much as Chani's turned up with all of this bad news, etc. And the conversation's really not going her way. And then she shifts her attention to the Gola, and we get this little conversation about the nature of the Gola, etc. Conversion. We see Paul almost hysterical. And Chani being very, very pragmatic and Fremen, I think, unlike Paul here. I don't know. There's something about the whole. It's almost like a distraction, but they have to go through the motions, if you like. But it's a wonderful way that she brings things back on topic here, if you like, as does Frank, and almost using the nature of Paul's relationship with Duncan, Idaho, with Hayt in this situation. So that was Duncan, Idaho's. Paul. She says, That man, was that Duncan, Idaho? Paul says, that was Duncan, Idaho. He's still there. Would he have allowed Irulan to go on living? Chani asked, and I think that the answer is probably no. And I think it's a really good. She's really well written in this chapter. It's just a very smart. It suits her character, if you see what I mean. There's that, and it's clever, isn't it? She's kind of brought what Paul's doing back onto the Irulan problem. And Paul's thoughts are quite funny here. I think it's a good bit. The water didn't sink too deep. Oh dear. And that's what was it? It's just, again, there's a little bit of payoff from what he said earlier. Let me just see if I can find it again. Just that she took this news with like was it sand absorbing water? Isn't that it? Something like that. Let me just see. Oh, I wonder where that was. But that's kind of, there we are. He watched her accept this. She did it in the way sand accepted water, absorbing and concealing. It's a lovely, I think it's a very well written chapter there. In response to that, the water didn't sink too deep. And he said, if I commanded it. So would he allow other Irulan to go on living? The water thing. If I commanded it. I've got another one for you here, folks. I've written see Gurney later. And that this is important later in relation to Gaius Helen Mohame and what happens to her. Paul gives commands. He's done it in Dune, and they're ignored. And in this sense, again, this sense of if I say something, this person will do it. We've got another example of when we get there that's not the case. And I think that's 3 in this chapter, isn't it? And it really, I think this is an incredibly well written, very tight little chapter. I really like what the characters are, but all the subtext, all the little questions, and things are going to start to accelerate within the narrative. The way the birth is going to accelerate, I think, as well. But I just think it's really well done, this chapter. I think it's heartbreaking. I think it's funny. I think the characters are very true to themselves. No comment on the film, but it's a cracking wee moment. Would you excuse me a wee second, folks? I'm just going to nip to the loo very quickly. And as soon as I get back, I'll check out our comments and we'll get on towards the end. Right back, folks. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Apologies. Let's just get a little bit of fluids. Holly, behave, love. Oh dear. Now you can come in and behave if you want, but sit down. Come on. All right. Oh dear, oh dear. Sorry about this, folks. Hello. You all right? Hello. You sit down. Apologies. We're at the Doghouse here, and I've got our Holly holiday coming in to say hello. I'll just catch up with your comments, folks. Let's see. Oh, Alvarabro just says, just found out your channel. Great stuff. Congratulations. Thank you very much, Joe. welcome to the channel. There's Carlos Crucetti saying, welcome to our gang, laughing out loud, and Sootpot saying, hiya, yeah, you're more than welcome. It's a friendly little place, this. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. We're working away at our book club, and there's all sorts of Dune stuff here. We're just saying, oh, apologies, I'm not talking quite properly tonight, as I've had new teeth fitted. So I'm struggling a little bit with all the super sibilant sounds, and so I do apologise a little bit. Hopefully, as Sootpot was saying, it will settle back in. But I've had to put a few audiobooks and things on hold. I'm super sibilant with that and all those fricative sounds. Hello, sausage. What are you at? I've got nothing for you. Sorry, I'm talking to a dog between the legs here. Let's see. Bear with me a wee second. Do you need out? No? What do you want? Do you want down the stay? Oh, her ears just went. 1 wee second. Right. There's one for you. There you go. Working on a funny time shift at these days, but they know it's time for their little dental treats at the end of the night, so they just come up and bug me a wee bit. Apologies, folks. But yes, Alvarobro, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, welcome to the station. You're very welcome. Let's see, where did we get to, folks? Yeah, if I commanded it. Now, as I said, that in fact, that's going to be I suppose it's to do with what happens to Gaius Helmoheim at the end of this book. But Paul commands something and Gurney disobeys him. So it's this sense of, I don't know how you would put it, self-assuredness maybe, that's maybe taken to a bit too far. If I commanded it because I'm the emperor, he's commanded things when he wasn't the emperor, and people haven't done them. They've deliberately disobeyed him. And that's another example of, I think, Paul perhaps not seeing something maybe, or just maybe reading too much into his own power. Is this, as again somebody pointed out, is this the intoxication of divinity? Is he drunk on his own power? I was actually going with the words earlier that I thought he was kind of pregnant with the vision, and especially with how do we put it, with the belly tightening and the hysterical desire to laugh. I thought, well, what's going on here with him? I think it's kind of in a funny way, he's very passive in this chapter, isn't he? But he doesn't seem to be handling things too well compared to the real pragmatism, I suppose, the real Fremen pragmatism of Chani. Her response to "if I commanded it" is that I don't understand. She said, "Shouldn't you be angry?" And my little comment is that he usually is, isn't he? Here we go. Paul says, "I am angry." And Chani says, "Well, you don't sound angry. You sound sorrowful." And he closed his eyes. "Yes, that too." Chani says, "You're my man," she said. "I know this. But suddenly, I don't understand you." And I think that's kind of important here. She's not getting this. "You're my man," that's possessive. But I know this for a fact, but suddenly I don't get you. I don't know what's going on. And Paul, we're told, abruptly Paul felt that he had walked down a long cavern. His flesh moved 1 foot and then another, but his thoughts went elsewhere. Footsteps. That was the thing I was thinking about. We have Chani's footsteps earlier and him moving 1 foot and then another. I just thought it was a little bit interesting. And Paul's response is, "I don't understand myself." He whispered. When he opened his eyes, he found that he had moved away from Chani. She spoke from somewhere behind him. There's a rift happening here, I think, in a sense. And although she's his man, You're my man. Sorry, she says to him and all this. Um, I don't know. I think this is particularly harsh on Chani, and that her confusion. I don't understand you anymore. Suddenly, I don't understand you. I'm angry and I'm sad. I'm not going to let you kill Irulan. And then it goes to a little bit of self pity. I think here. I don't understand myself. He whispered. But when he opened his eyes, he found that he'd moved away from her, and that she's somewhere behind him. She spoke from somewhere behind him. Chani says this, "Beloved, I'll not ask again what you've seen. I only know I'm to give you the air we want." And there's that response to that. I suppose the question I was wondering earlier when Paul says, "You'll bear the air we want," isn't that enough? It's a bit harsh, isn't it? Is it enough? You know? Delicious. Right, sorry, hang on. Holly's playing up a wee bit. Right, you, come on. Go down and see Wendy. Come on. Come on. You all right there? Sorry about that, folks. Oh, goodness. Always fun here at the Doghouse, isn't it? Usually one of them's fine and the other one's messing around a wee bit, but Holly's playing about tonight and Diddle's just sleeping like a little angel. Alvarobro. I'll try that again. Alvarobro. Apologies, new teeth. The pronunciation is quite correct. It's a Portuguese word. It means red and white. Thank you very much. We love our words on here. Thank you very much. That's cool. My name means red, doesn't it, Russ? Excellent. Thank you very much. Oh, that's cool. Oh, we've got some interesting words. But anyway, let's see. Beloved, I'll not ask again what you've seen. Done with it. That's the way I took it. I'm done asking you. I think I only know what I'm to give you the air we want. What you've seen. I'll not ask again what you've seen. And I've written next this. And what else does he know, or has known from the beginning? Because he nodded then and says this. I've known that from the beginning. And there we go. That's truth, I think. I've known that you're going to give all of it. What does he know? What does he with? It's a tricky one, isn't it? And I suppose whenever we really look at the likes of Paul in this kind of detail, it really makes us ask questions. He nodded then, I've known that from the beginning. He turned, studied her, and Chani seemed very far away. She drew herself up, placed a hand on her abdomen. This is her response. It's super pragmatic, I think. A proper Fremen response. I'm hungry. The medics tell me I must eat 3 or 4 times what I ate before. I'm frightened, beloved. It goes too fast. And we get that side of her as well. She really does love this guy, doesn't she? He's her beloved. He's her man. And as much as she's very pragmatic. I think it's a little bit heartbreaking, actually, when she says, I'm frightened. I think it's really sad. I'm hungry. That's the pragmatism. That's the Fremen, I think. The medics tell me I must eat 3 or 4 times what I ate before. I'm frightened, beloved. It goes too fast. And I've written next that as we go from this is us at the very end of this chapter. The medics told her, not Paul. And Paul's thoughts are too fast, he agreed. This fetus knows the necessity for speed. And I've written next to that, just for a joke, unlike the fetus in Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2. Couldn't resist it. I just had a couple of little thoughts about hysteria, what we call female hysteria, and Freud's theory of hysterical conversion. And Paul, as much as is it Hayt being converted here? Is it Paul's being turned around? I don't know. It's very interesting, just the use of words. Excuse me, and how they kind of line up. it's almost in terms of there's a thing actually. Hang on, as much as we talk about it, let's have a wee look very quickly. Now, what do we call the triple goddess in the Dune? Is it the triple deity in the Dune universe? Let me see. I want to kind of remember that. There's a little description in the terminology of the Imperium, I think. I'll maybe see. I don't know. It's I can't remember exactly what I'm looking for, but it was a term that basically was saying about the religions of the there's a male, female, and gender kind of neutral, if you like, in relation to what was it actually? It's something to do with the old religions of the Imperium. I think it's definitely, honestly, I hate it when I can't remember these things. Somewhere, I'm wondering if any of you can remember what I'm thinking of. But it's something in the terminology of the Imperium that kind of describes, I suppose, as one of the religions in the Dune universe. But I'm just scanning through it here, hoping that it would just pop up to my attention. But I can't really think of what it was. Here it is. Great Mother. The Great Mother is the horned goddess, the feminine principle of space, commonly mother space, the feminine face of the male-female neuter trinity, accepted as supreme being by many religions within the Imperium. It was kind of, I was getting the some sort of female associations with Paul here, particularly just in terms of he's going to laugh at Chani here and manages to hide it, but it's his hysterical desire to laugh. And as much as we talk, there's a fair amount about concealment, hiding, the vision and what we can see and what we can't see. And I've just the little notes that I've scribbled at the end of the chapter as I finish up, as I normally do, are little questions or things I think of, maybe I forgot, scribbled down. I've asked, is Paul moral in his treatment of Chani? And the other question I've asked is, does conventional morality matter with Paul? Is it a thing that we can throw out the window because of the nature of his character? And then I've written another question under that, because it made me think, does conventional morality matter when we read the Dune series? And if Paul's vision is accurate, ? And I've written no. Paul is hysterical. Why? Paul's converted to what? So just running with some of my ideas there. I don't know what you think of them, folks. And if anybody's got any wee questions about that, but I'll tell you what a cracking chapter. I so enjoyed picking this apart. I just thought that I didn't find any typos or stupid mistakes or like we normally come across. I thought that this was a really well put together chapter by Frank. And I actually really enjoyed doing the work on it. It got me thinking a lot. As I said, I know somebody saying there, was it you, Supot? I think that you said I enjoyed the previous chapter. I did too, but just in terms of something to pick, something to work with, there wasn't much in it. And I just thought there's tons in this. All sorts of questions that we can ask and wonder about and be curious about this hero. And hopefully, well, as I said, it's nice for some of the questions to be answered within the books in the series. There are plenty of things that Frank doesn't kind of want us to find out or wants to leave things hanging. I suppose that's kind of, seen as probably an opportunity for some in this day and age, But what a great wee chapter! Absolutely, I just thought, wow, this is this is a science fiction book, but the way this is written, the subtlety in it, I think, and again, Frank wants us to reread this book and look for little things and stuff. And when you realize the amount of time and effort that this man puts into writing, for all these little things to be here, this kind of thing. It really does. This is I think, a great example of Frank's writings being very tight. Um, and yeah, talk about we talk about Chani in Dune Part Two, but this is the real Chani here. And whenever we do see her, I generally think she's quite badass in this chapter, and my heart breaks for her. What a horrible position to be in. And the man that's got her pregnant isn't seeming to be particularly bothered. He can see the future. Oh, can I kill this? She's killed her. Chani is doomed from this point onwards, I think, and is a nature of doom. Her fate is sealed according to Paul's vision. And yeah, he's he has a little bit of a chat with her, and then they go and have a little examination of Hayt, and then almost seems that the language between Paul and Hayt's a bit fluffy, if you know what I mean, compared to Chani's blunt force trauma questions, and just think here. Kind of almost in the background, but I think we get a few little things here from him. But again, if Paul's telling us that he's not intended to do him violence, then we can run with that, if you like. And he's setting us up for the return of Duncan, Idaho. But this Chani in this chapter is Chani that I know. And I came out of this chapter not thinking too much of the two men, or almost what we were saying. We've got a male, a female, and something not quite, who knows what, a gola in the room. There's terms here within this chapter. We've got thraldom, we've got succubus, converted, hysteria, and hysterical. Your choice of words, particularly within this chapter, quite interesting. And I think Paul comes out of it as Paul doesn't come out of this chapter to me particularly well. And at the same time, and here's the trouble with Paul, is you could go, wow, he's a bit of a shit here, isn't he, to Chani? What? This is a horrible way for a person to treat their partner, the person who's going to bear their children. It's appalling. It's a lie of admission. And then yet we have to consider that if he says anything, that everything that he's doing is following a role that will create a future to happen, because if he says anything or deviates from it, it will make something much worse, or it will not create, I suppose, what we come to as the golden path. He's paralyzed. He can do nothing but, I think, roll forward, if you like. And that's the big question about Paul Atreides, is, thraldom of this moment, but is he a slave to this vision? With the intent, with the understanding that he believes that the vision will come true. Does that make sense? And therefore, to do this stuff would take great resolve. If we flip it and go that this is an admirable act by him, to tell her anything might result in her being tortured, being enslaved. Agonizing sorrow, I think people can live with. I have a fair amount of sorrow in my life. It's not that bad. If you see what I mean. It's and whatever's worse, but it's the dual nature of Paul, isn't it? Do we look at him as a hero? Is he a villain? In this case, I always think that Paul is a hero, but he's a hero whose mistakes are just really, really, really massive. And because of that, regardless of how you look at him, he's still a human being to a degree. Although, again, this is the thing, we could argue he's technically not. You could argue almost everybody in the Dune universe is not a baseline human, with the possible exception, I always thought, of the Baron. you know. But yeah, yeah, I don't know if anybody's got any questions or comments. Fire away. But I absolutely adored this chapter, especially from not having much to work with the chapter of the previous week. But I loved it. I loved working through it, and it just got me thinking. And that's what Frank does really well, I think. Let's get somebody look see if you're some comments there. Cynthia's saying regarding the air we want phrase, I took Chani's reiteration as a begrudging obedience, not necessarily a statement of what or who she is. Paul would open up the world for Hayt, but is narrowing her world. And Carlos Coselli says it helps that the Fremen have such a pragmatic view of life and death. Yeah. Soup puts in this is meat. Yes, absolutely. Something for me to get my fake choppers into. His teeth, all these. Oh, Alvaro Bro says about question two. I thought about that too, but reading God Emperor, because it always felt it was the mind of a god, not a human. That's a good point. Whenever we get there, because we are going there, I suppose we're on the chapter 15 here now. This book's got 24 chapters, so we're well past the halfway point. Children of Dune, I think it's going to be the one that I'm going to find a bit of a slog. It's not because I dislike the book, but it's just because I'm so keen to get to God Emperor. I want to tear it apart. And it's the one book of all the Dune series that I'm really looking forward to tearing apart. Yes, that's the trick with the God Emperor, but this is and I'm looking forward to this. But how would I put it? Paul Atreides is a warning, and Frank. This is the way I like to think of it. Frank presents us the full range of this warning in the first 3 books of Dune, and as much as we can look at them as trilogies, if we imagine the 7th book there, we can say that up to Children of Dune is on one side. God Emperor is the bridging book, and then we would have had 3 Bene Gesserit books on the other side. The last book, which was never written by Frank, passed away. But they're also duologies. Paul's the main protagonist, antagonist, if you want. We'll go with protagonist in the first 2 books, but he is in the 3rd book. Leto's the protagonist of the second 2 books, if you see what I mean. But he does appear. In book Children of Dune and God Emperor, but he does appear in Dune Messiah. And then, of course, it depends on how you look at it. But the point I was trying to make, I suppose, is ultimately that with Paul's a warning, and there we go, here comes the God Emperor. And he's more like, I warned you. And I think with the God Emperor, how would we put it? The best way to put it is that Frank's saying, I warned you with Paul Atreides, and you didn't really pay attention, did you? Now look what's coming. The God Emperor is very much, you were warned, here I am. This is 10, I'm much worse. He's the ultimate predator, isn't he? And as much as it is a being, it acts like very much the mind of God, not a human. But that's the great thing about the God Emperor, how we can look at him. And I can't wait to get there. Because do we look at him as a god? Or is he, I think he's very human in some ways as well. But the mind of the leader of the seconds, it'll be enormous fun taking that apart. I think, and I think it'll plunge us into some of the great minds of the ancient world, if you like, which is where I like sort of hanging around. I think we'll see. There's all sorts of aspects of different characters to Leto the Second. Just a couple offhand would be Harem. Which is the one, the dominant personality that he uses to keep all the other personalities in control. Harem is Cheops is the Greek name. Khufu is the Egyptian pharaoh Khufu. The Greeks called him Cheops, but that's who Harem is. And I think there's certainly a chunk of Marcus Aurelius, for example. There's a few Roman emperors in the God Emperor. But it's and the interesting thing is, I suppose, whenever we get there, is that ultimately, whenever Paul abandons things, I suppose that the idea of the one single vision that that these people have, we'll eventually call the golden path. That's what this is. So it's not got a name just yet. Paul's golden path ends when he abandons it, and Leto's begins. They're not the same. But it's ultimately within this chapter, things that Paul sees, and there's a suggestion. There's a couple of things. As I said, the payoff will come, later. If I command it, that's one. The medics don't turn up, and Paul, right at the beginning, as I said, we were saying, where are we? The medics were the best. They'd call when they had news, and that's from his, prescient vision. Had recorded these moments, but he shielded his awareness, so he's seen it all. All right, and from his own admission, we get it on the last little bit of this chapter. I've known that from the beginning, but it comes down to what does he know, And whenever we get to the God Emperor, I think there's all sorts of questions there as well, But it's I love this chapter. I absolutely thought it was wonderful. It was just, just the previous chapter 13, just a bit of a lull, and I'm kind of thinking that it has more purpose than it does. But just in terms of me being able to get something out of it, last week I think I pretty much just read the thing, and I even thought, there's a words that you know, like diatribe. I thought, I'll break that up etymologically, it'll be something. But there was so little. And then to hit this, I think, is a real bit of maybe it's just the calm before the storm, a real lull in the story. But this one had real punch to me. Vision, concealment, the idea of conversion. I was kind of thinking about King Arthur and Paul as well earlier. It's something that we haven't gone into too much, is the whole Campbell. I've talked a little bit about it in the PhD videos, what Frank calls the Camelot pattern, etc. But I was thinking in terms of the vision, if you like, and it made me think of Paul kind of in a similar way to King Arthur, but it made me think about if the prescient vision was his weapon, if you like. It made me think of Excalibur, and Excalibur has Excalibur's a Latin transliteration, I believe, of an Irish word. But let's see. Excalibur has the idea that, there's a few different myths associated with Excalibur, but the idea is that it has two things written on it. And if you look at apparently if you saw the sword and lying on the ground, what you would see on it is the words "pick me up." And then if you turned the sword around, you would see the words "throw me away" on it. And I've always thought that's interesting, particularly because Excalibur is a sword of war. There's another sword in the Arthurian myth that is called Clarent, is the sword of peace. So you can't knight anybody with Excalibur, for example, because it cuts through any metal or stone. So if you did that, you just lop off their shoulders, this kind of thing. So there's a different sword for knighting people, and it's meant to be a sword of peace. But it was that kind of idea of the prescient vision being something. Excalibur has this, it's the moral choice, but is etched on its blade, if you like. Pick me up, throw me away. Best thing you can do to me is get rid of me. And that's the sword of kings, if you like. It's meant to be the Irish sword of the moon. Oddly enough, because Arthur's an Irish name, isn't it? But it was just the prescient vision as a gift, if you like, as a weapon, whatever you want to call it. As much as you have it, once you have it, he really wants to throw it away, doesn't he? It's that, and again, it's the moral choice that we look at. For those of us, some of us maybe know the Lord of the Rings. There you go. There's a powerful ring there. Check that one out. I don't see too many like this. Oh, don't know if you can see that properly. It's a proper Celtic ring with little wee of knotworks and stuff in it. It's my wedding ring. But the Lord of the Rings, the ring, for example, is based on the Ring of Gyges. From Plato's Republic. And again, what's the moral choice of this ring? Whether it be a sword, a ring, prescience, that whatever you want, whatever your type of weapon is, it's the best choice that you can ever make is never to use the damn thing. Put it away, get rid of it, hide it, because what it will do to you, what that level of power. And here we have this man, and I think was it might have been Cynthia, might have been Chai, I think earlier, pointing out that that he's drunk on divinity, and talk the little epigraph that we get at the start, talking about the worm, if you like. Shai Halud as a divinity doesn't need a robe to cover up his intoxications of divinity or hide the burnings of desire. The drunkenness of divine power. And I think we've got a bit of that here, to be honest with you. But the little bit, the things that make me really kind of go, what's going on with this guy? Particularly this bit is Paul's thoughts where he says the fact that what he concealed from her prolonged her life. So he's finding a good in every evil. Does that make sense? But he asks himself, was it evil to prefer Chani to an heir? And that seems to be not what he does at all, or the preference is there. But by what right did he make her choice for her? So whatever he preferred, he's made her choice. And he asked that question outright and then just goes, foolish thoughts. And who could hesitate given the alternatives? Well, I think anybody could. I think anybody would hesitate at the very least, but they're not foolish thoughts at all. And it's the way the table, I think. It's possibly a little bit of guilt, I don't know. But it's the process, what's happening to Paul here, I think. How it affects Chani, all the things that are around his empire, if you like, his throne. And they really have gone for I suppose they knew that they would go for Chani. They have done, and they've got her in a way. They've killed they've killed the love of his life, if you like. She's just not dead yet. And I think what Cynthia was saying, Chani's reiteration is a begrudging obedience, not necessarily a state. Begrudging, a statement of what or who she is. Paul would open up the word for hate, but it's not her. Yeah, it's almost that within this really bad news is almost this little conversation between Paul and Hayt. Is I got the sense that it was almost, what's the term for it these days, a bromance or something. As much as he's provoking the Gola with certain questions, it's the bit where Paul says, but he asks Hayt, has a Gola ever remembered his past? And the Gola says, many attempts have been made. No Gola has ever been restored to his former being. And Paul says, but you long for this to happen. And Hayt says, yes. But it's this bit, voice soft. Paul said, if there's a way. And I just thought that's a bit, hello, bad news over here. It all seemed a little bit of a distraction almost. And if I was Chani, I would not be too happy with my partner of choice here, Paul Atreides. I would not be happy with him at all. And begrudging obedience, we go with that, Cynthia, yeah. But the question is he looking for obedience? Does he? It's one of those things. Is it like old-fashioned wedding vows and stuff like that? I can't really think of what they're like these days. But obedience, for example, myself and my wife, there's nothing about obedience in our wedding vows at all. None of that nonsense. Alvarabro is saying, I think that the main difference is that Paul was a human who became a god, but Leto was never a human. And as a character, I think Leto II was one of the best insights on how God. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. We don't meet characters like Leto II in literature very often. Where you will meet characters like that is often in kind of like mythology stories or fantasy stories, etc., where many a god just seems to kind of have the attributes of, I suppose, the Olympians, Paul was a human who didn't quite make it to God. I think we would go with it. That's why he ends up being a prophet. It's the failed divinity of Paul. But Leto was never a human, and as a character, I think Leto II would be. I don't know. it's a question of who's human, but I totally agree. How a god would think. Leto the Second is probably the best attempt at that. I think it's one of those things that we ask within our little community here. Oh, is I suppose there's always a question of what's your favorite Dune book. A lot of us go it's God Emperor. Who's your favorite character in the Dune series? It's usually for me it's Leto the Second or Alia. But Alia being away at a certain point. But when Alia is in the books, Leto the Second tends not to be around too much. I suppose we'll see that in Children of Dune. But my two favorite characters would be Leto the Second and Alia. And I see they're also all very tragic. I think. But yeah, it's going to be fun when we get to Leto, isn't it? It's yeah. There's there. I don't know. Hardly any characters that literature produces. I'd be struggling to think of one, to be honest with you. Um, we might have to go to Milton or something like that, but I can't think of a character that's been so well represented like that. My mum read all the Dune series before she passed away. When she read God Emperor of Dune, the questions from her were mighty. And it resulted in my mum renounced her faith before she passed away. She said not to tell anybody, but she thought it was all bollocks. What she'd been brought up with, and she'd asked a lot of questions, and she went through all six of the Dune books because she was quite curious to see what I was up to. And my dad read them as well, actually. But it's a book that's changed the way a lot of people think. I think, and it's a very intelligent book, and he's an absolute monster. If you break, it's the same thing whenever we do it with Leto the Second. We've done it with Paul in our book club here. Oh, is that we've been maintaining a body count for these people, and it's in the billions. And Leto the Second's going to make that body count look like a picnic in the park. It's just and again, it's as much as we see what's the reasons behind it, this kind of thing. That's the point about these two, particularly Paul and Leto, is and I find Alia highly sympathetic as well. Is ultimately these people are the biggest mass murderers you'll have ever read about, and you never see the people that they murder. Is the comment really in this book, in particular, about how Paul kills. And he's killed an awful lot of people in 12 years. It's a ridiculous body count. But when we get to the God Emperor, and again, it's not overtly presented to you, but this guy has killed a ridiculous amount of people. And I like the fact that even if you think about it, he gets to kill Duncan Idaho's over and over and over again. But he's a fascinating character, and there's as much as we try to separate him from being human, I don't know if we always can. There is something of the divine that's not, I suppose, shall we use the word intoxicated in Leto the Second. And again, he's an evolution of the Kwisatz Haderach, isn't he? That's the thing we like to talk about, is that Paul is not quite a Kwisatz Haderach. He is, and he's something more. Ali is an abomination. We question what that means. And Leto the Second and Ganima will both be abominations as well. But Leto the Second will become a Kwisatz Haderach and an immortal worm and more. And so the thing about these characters is, although we don't really have them all on the same page and the same height of their powers, they evolve. And ultimately, we'll see this Hayt character evolve in a very different way. And I suppose we think about other memory and future prescience, etc. But with the Duncan Idaho goal, is what we get is a very personal gene memory, if you like. But yeah, there we go. So that's I don't know. There's so much to say about the God Emperor. I've studied a few people like him in my time. If there are some right scumbags. Not saying that he's a scumbag, but there are some right scumbags throughout history who have believed in their own self-appointed divinity, and how they've gone about things and talked about things and written them. We've got a couple of Roman emperors who are pretty much good for that, and they're completely nuts. um, yeah, they have a power that's equivalent to this, if you like. you know. But yeah, what a great wee chapter, folks. I really enjoyed it. I'll tell you what, I'll just get a wee sip of fluids here, and I'll probably get ready to wrapping up in a few minutes or so. But what else was I going to add? There was a couple of wee things on the science fiction radar, where somebody pointed out sadly that Werner Vinge had passed away. I think someone out there is reading a Werner Vinge book at the minute, and I went a hunting. And I'm really sad to say he's one of the authors. I had two or three Werner Vinge books, and I'm really sad to say I think he's one of the authors that his books have not survived the big book destruction of 2007. It's real sad. I'd lost a lot of books that got damaged, but yeah, if anybody's not read any Werner Vinge, go check him out. He's quite an important figure in science and science fiction. Personally, for me, he's a guy that gave me a lot of ideas, and kind of reading some stuff by him is kind of what started me writing a long time ago. But he's the chap that brought us really the term technological singularity, and all that kind of stuff. Just the other wee thing I was going to say is I popped to the pictures this week, the flicks, the movies, the films, and because we haven't been going out to the pictures very often, and we went to see. It was my wife, my son, and myself. Just thought we'd do a family day out. Went for dinner and then went to a movie, and we went to see. Was it Late Night with the Devil? And it's a kind of a sort of film that normally wouldn't arrive in the cinema here. We would just miss it. And that's a really good. Anybody's into their horror, that's a cracking horror film. I really enjoyed it. It was mesmerizing, just really good. Just watching the whole thing, absolutely loved it. That's the second really good film I've seen recently. That I'm calling these films antidotes to Dune 2, antidotes to the soulless, Denis Villeneuve thing, But if anybody hasn't seen it, check it out if you've got an opportunity. I loved it. It's something a little bit different. It's quite quirky. And the lead actor in it is David Dasmalchian, who was playing Piter in Dune Part 1. And goodness gracious, we talked about actors being wasted in that movie. He's not wasted in this one. He's exceptionally good. So I highly recommend it if anybody hasn't seen it. I don't want to spoil it or anything, but it's just a bloody good film. I loved it. Carlos is saying it's curious that geneticists like the Benny Thylax never created a human worm hybrid to a version of melange. That's a good point. Well, there's something of that there. One of the mysteries of Dune, isn't it? There's something in this chapter of it, and it's subtle. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. Excuse me, my nose is tickling. Somewhere there's a plastic something which remembers the shape of Duncan, Idaho. It's said the ancients probed this region before the Butlerian Jihad. What's the extent of this memory hit? What did it learn from the original? So the ancients probed this region before the Butlerian Jihad. It's just what you're saying, that they never created a human worm hybrid. Who's to say that? Well, the worm is a hybrid of a plant and an animal. We don't really know which. I suppose there might be a bit of human in there. You never know. But yeah, that's kind of suggests, where did the worms come from? The ancients probed this region. The worm is an introduced species, and the other thing that we found out about it is that it's been created in a lab, and that it's a hybrid of a plant and an animal. And that Arrakis is not a desert planet before the worm comes there. It's the worm that turns it into a desert planet. All part of the mysteries of Dune, I think. I did the life. I went through the all 6 books once just to get the life cycle of the worm, which was a which is a little picture there. But yeah, there's a big mystery about the worm. I think the main animal I think the worm's based on is the lamprey. And again, we've put up some wee stuff on it. It has a life cycle that's very similar, and it actually buries itself in the sand and so on, and its mouth and teeth, etc. Yeah, quite interesting. But yeah, do you know, never create a human worm hybrid to a version of that. The other thing, Carlos, I kind of start wondering is that we're supposed to be in a period of deep stagnation. You know, up until this Kwisatz Haderach turns up, the Empire's stagnant, but it's 10,191 before the AG, isn't it? After the Guild. So once the point I suppose I'm making is that these different schools, the Bene Chilax, the Bene Gesserit, Sooks, the Mentats, have got 10,000 years to develop. And I suppose that's where we're at with this. That they've got the Chilax, you have got face dancers, they've got Golas, this kind of thing. They have axolotl tanks. The Bene Gesserit have got this other memory and all of these, the body trained to the ultimate control of nerve and muscle, you kind of wonder how long these things, and is there a sort of stagnation within like the Thylaxi? They're that salary. They're trying to offer Paul, a female Gola to which to control all this kind of stuff. Where it makes you wonder where was the technology at just prior to 10,191 for all these different groups, because then we'll get to see all of these technologies and even the drug melange evolve. Everything evolves in Dune, But it is indeed, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We were told about it's pretty almost impossible to capture a worm, but then someone has a decent enough go at it. Nothing's that impossible, I suppose. I think ultimately sometimes, Carlos, it's interesting that we just have to look at that. As much as all these people are kind of superhuman, and at the very least, as I said, the only character I can always think of as normal, pretty normal within Dune, is the Baron. Just as in terms of his genetics and stuff like that, But he probably is a product of a breeding program as well. But yeah, got Golas but no clones. It's interesting. There's a lot to wonder about, I suppose. And one of the things I keep, sometimes the little questions that I wonder about, because I haven't gone too far into the Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson books, is I think a lot of the things that Frank Herbert liked to leave unsaid, unspoken, hanging, they've taken that as an opportunity to write a book and fill in the gap, I think it's something that affects, funnily enough, in a rather chaotic way. What is it? I would say, their books provide positive feedback into the Dune universe. I think that's how Frank would put it. There you go. But it is curious, yeah. I was actually thinking a little bit about Frank Herbert and Samuel Butler, and the whole sort of discussion of genetics and evolution, and all that kind of stuff that is coming out of 19th century England. We've got characters in here in Dune named after, some of these people, like De Vries. Peter De Vries is named after Hugo De Vries. He's considered, the father of modern genetics, isn't he? Very Dutch name, isn't it, De Vries? Hugo De Vries, there he is. And it's Gregor Mendel. Who came first? It was Mendel, wasn't it? So there you go. Hugo Marie De Vries was a Dutch botanist, one of the first geneticists, known chiefly for suggesting the concept of genes and rediscovering the laws of heredity, in the 1890s, while apparently unaware of Gregor Mendel's work for introducing the term mutation for developing a mutation theory. There's a lot that's subtle in Dune. I suppose a lot of that stuff is set up in the first book, But the questions are a good one. It's a good question, And that's one of the things I love about this book. this chapter again, just coming back to it, got so many questions, and really part of it is what's this author up to as well, because he's a very deceitful author, I think, Frank Herbert, in a nice way, in a deliberate nice way, if you know what I mean. But there we go. Aye. So sorry, yeah, as I said, sorry about last week, folks. Oh, I was in agony, and just had a miserable couple of days with pain, and I was actually quite in a fair bit of pain actually when I did the episode. But I was kind of just to the point where I need to put this behind me, or just overcome it, if you know what I mean. Put it in the back of my mind, because the only thing I don't like about pain, I suppose, is it just stops me from thinking properly. Get quite stupid when you're in a lot of pain. So yeah, working on so many things. As I said, there was somebody sent me a wee thing about shoulder angels, this wee exercises against the wall, and I've been working away at them, and they've really, really helped. So thank you very much. But yeah, there we go. As I said, a couple of wee film recommendations. If anybody hasn't seen Spaceman yet with Adam Sandler, I loved it. And Late Night with the Devil, I thought was fantastic. Something I don't usually go to see horror films in the cinema. I think the last horror film I saw was Halloween H2O or something. But there we go. So the next chapter, folks, is chapter 15. It's the one that begins with the audacious nature of Muad'Dib's actions may be seen in the fact that he knew from the beginning whither he was bound, yet not once did he step aside from that path. We'll be going more into this, and it's another nice little short chapter of 8 pages, so it will definitely be on, no problem. Same time next week at Thursday, 9 p.m. But I have to let you know it'll be GMT +1 because the clocks go forward this week here. So there we go. So Sootpot saying, got to go, Doc. Take it easy, Sootpot. I'll chuck you a wee email soon. Thank you very much. And yeah, just time for me to say thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. And Alvaro Robro, thanks for popping in for the first time. And we'll be back online with chapter 15 this Thursday coming at 9 p.m. GMT +1. And in the meantime, I'll say I hope you all have a nice Easter holiday, etc. If you are doing anything like that. And take care of yourselves and look after yourselves no matter where you are. So Cynthia saying thanks, Doc. Thank you, Cynthia. And Chai saying good night all. And Alvaro, thank you. No, thank you, sir. And again, apologies for the teeth and all the super sibilant sounds and the whistling and stuff like that. And hopefully, a week or two and it should all be sorted. But we'll see. We might have more of the same next week. So there you go, folks. So listen, look after yourselves. Have a nice holidays, and we'll see you next time. Take care, folks. Good day. All the best.